I picked that rifle up, and a little feller about, probably that big, come out of there, and I want you to know them arms was kicking, them legs was killing. He looked like a road runner.
And then one night, Amber and I were out here in the middle of the night, and we heard them, like they were calling back and forth to one another.
For decades, the legend of Bigfoot has haunted North America's forests, an elusive giant glimpsed by those who venture into the wild. Witnesses report eerie calls, massive footprints, and dark figures slipping beyond sight. Now, chilling encounters and strange footage force researchers and locals to question the impossible. Could something massive still roam these woods, hiding in plain view? Footage. Courtesy. Animal Planet. The interviewer asked those nearby what the most recent activity in the area had been. One of the researchers pointed to a nearby footprint cast. "These are just 2 days old," he said. The group gathered around, visibly interested. "They waited until the last minute to show us," someone remarked with a quiet laugh. Another researcher leaned in for a closer look. "It's still damp," he noted. They examined the impression carefully. "That's a beautiful cast," one of them said. "And honestly, there's nothing about it that raises any red flags. It doesn't look fake."
What's the most recent activity either of you are aware of in this area?
Well, these are 2 days old.
Oh, they're hiding them till the last minute. Wow.
Still wet, kind of.
Look at that.
That's a beautiful cast.
Look at that. Nothing about it throws red flags to me that these are faked.
With these prints here, we also had a bluff chart.
The pattern suggested the creature had slid multiple times. Then, on the next occasion, something was spotted standing behind a thick bush. However, the dense vegetation made it impossible to get any closer. Shortly afterward, the researcher returned, determined to take a closer look. He decided to head back into the area. As he made his way through the brush, he uncovered something remarkable, a well-preserved cast. "That's a beauty," he remarked, admiring the find. "The first thing that stands out is the toe placement," he explained. Sasquatches have remarkable flexibility in their feet, which is why this type of configuration often appears in cast data. He smiled as he studied the cast. The fact that all 5 toes are so clearly visible is really striking. Could this finally be the evidence that ends the mystery once and for all?
Common in the data set of casts. I love that all 5 toes are visible. I mean, the last 2 are a little bit lost, but that pinky's not, which is really nice. And also, if you look very closely, the toes are actually impressed more deeply than the ball of the foot itself. All of these things are really nice indicators of a very likely real Sasquatch print.
Cliff's voice was steady, but there was an unmistakable hint of anticipation. "He's eager to see the exact spot where Don cast this footprint," he said, his gaze sharpening. "But before we go any further, we need to talk to Sam, the man who witnessed Bigfoot that left the footprints." The interviewer leaned in, his curiosity palpable. "Can you walk us through what happened? What did you see with your own eyes? What exactly took place out there?" The man paused, his eyes distant, as though reliving the moment. He started sharing that he was out fishing, trying to catch some bass in the lily pads by the shore. The fish were biting right away, and everything seemed normal. He paused again, his brow furrowing with confusion. He cast the line again, but when it went to set the hook, the lure, it just went right by him. He doesn't know what happened. His voice softened, almost as if sharing a secret. That's when he saw something move out of the corner of his eye, something along the shoreline. It turned and looked right at him. A big white creature. He took a deep breath, managed to capture it on video. And then he found something else. Tracks. Strange tracks he couldn't explain. What if these tracks are the evidence they've been chasing all along? What do they really mean? Footage courtesy, Western Bigfoot Expedition. Who or what was silently moving through the darkness cloaked in the shadows of the forest? Through the lens of his thermal imager, he spotted a figure standing motionless among the trees. Its shape faintly outlined against the dark backdrop of the forest. From his vantage point, the figure seemed to lower itself slowly to the ground, almost as if it were lying on its stomach. Then, it began to move in a peculiar way, its body shifting in a slow, swimming-like motion across the forest floor, as though it were trying to bury itself in the thick layer of remains surrounding it. The movement was deliberate, almost as if it were intentionally blending into the environment.
And in those trees there, through his thermal imager, he saw a figure standing. And from what he describes, it went down, kind of on its stomach. It started doing like a swimming motion on the ground, almost like if it's trying to bury itself in the debris around it. Then it almost did like this strange yoga pose looking thing. One thing that he noticed.
As he continued to observe, the figure suddenly shifted again, adopting a strange, twisted pose, something to an odd yoga position. The movement was fluid, yet unnerving. One detail that stood out clearly through the thermal imaging was the hand. It was raised in the air, and through the heat signature he could distinctly see all 5 fingers, each one long and elongated, gripping the air as if it were searching for something. The size of the hand was immense, its shape unmistakable in the glowing thermal outline. There was clear evidence of human-like activity in the area, like an old can from a banquet. But the can appeared ancient, as if it had been broken a long time ago, maybe decades. It was the small details, like this, that often caught their attention. The last time they investigated similar tree breaks in the region, they surprisingly pulled Sasquatch hair from one of them.
This thing had gotten up and walked away. Now, I'm getting the camera back at my... What happened was that they went back, and these thermal imagers didn't have record capability, so you had to strap it onto like a backpack and hook it up to a VCR of some sort.
Across the North American wilderness, a strange and recurring pattern had emerged. People had been finding unusual hair after suspected Bigfoot activity, whether through reported sightings, massive footprints, or freshly snapped branches. The hair collected in these areas often had a peculiar, almost otherworldly texture, raising more questions than answers. This ongoing mystery continued to unfold in various regions, with each new discovery adding another piece to the growing puzzle of the Bigfoot legend. Each find deepened the intrigue surrounding the elusive creature. But the questions remained. Was it really Bigfoot's hair hiding in the shadows? And how much of the wilderness still remained unexplored, waiting to reveal its darkest secrets?
There's human activity because there's a can of Coors Banquet. Wow. But this looks old.
Yeah, this got broken over a long time ago.
Little things like this, you know. Last time we focused on some tree breaks like that, we pulled Sasquatch hair out of it. So.
All over the North American wilderness, there's been a particular hair that's been collected. This hair has been found after supposed Bigfoot activity.
He admitted that his first attempt had been unsuccessful, but planned to try again soon, asking for a moment to prepare, focused on the trail's direction, and began extracting something buried in the ground. Without a shovel, he improvised a non-conventional method, hoping to dig deep enough. The man tensed but continued digging despite the discomfort. Eventually, he managed to uncover the object, hoping it contained valuable information. He also expressed concern about damaging it before the long walk back. Excitement grew as he revealed what appeared to be a foot-shaped impression. "It does," he confirmed, impressed by the find. The observer prepared to walk back through rough terrain, carefully protecting the discovery. Upon arriving home, his first goal was to clean the footprint for further analysis. A few days ago, the group made their way back into the wilderness, hoping for a successful hunt. It was early in the morning. After they arrived, the group split up to cover more ground. One of them went off on his own, walking along the top of a wide, grassy embankment. On the other, thick, dark woods stretched out. Tall trees packed close together with shadows covering the ground beneath them. It felt calm, but also a little eerie, like something could be hiding just out of sight.
Well, a friend of mine from work took me out to his deer lease, and he told me, oh, by the way, there's Bigfoots out here. I'm like, oh, really? He said, yeah. The guy's believable. He's a friend of mine. Next thing you know, we walk out onto the property, and we just went on about our business. But, that's in the back of your mind then,
He walked a little farther, careful not to look that way, but his ears stayed alert. He always acted like he didn't see or hear anything, letting the strange sound keep going. He waited quietly, watching and listening, hoping to find out where the noise was coming from.
I'd walk a little further, he'd walk a little further. Well, I'm not looking over there. I'm hearing it, and I always pretend like I don't see or hear anything. So whatever it's doing, it will keep doing it until I can figure it out. And it kept pacing me till finally I got alarmed enough. I swung a gun around and pointed it at the trees and told him, if you're in there, you need to come out because I'm going to shoot you.
He went back there and saw a footprint, about that big and that wide, big enough to fit his size 12 Red Wing boot without touching the sides. The footprint still had water running into it, while every other puddle around was clear.
And sure enough, we went back there and I looked, and there was a footprint about that big and about that wide that I could put my number 12 Red Wing boot down into and not touch the sides, still had water running into it. Every other puddle around there was clear except that one. And that's where it had stepped and crossed over.
At first, he thought it was just his imagination, a trick of the light, a shift in the wind. But then he felt it, that overwhelming sense that something was watching him. And that's when it hit him. Oh my God, something was really out there. Not just a story, not just local legend. This was real. The woods had gone completely still, unnaturally silent, like the forest itself was holding its breath. He wasn't alone, and whatever was out there, it was big. That was the moment everything changed. The first time he truly believed. His first oh my God moment with Sasquatch.
I never do this. Well, I couldn't help it. I picked that rifle up and stuck it out there and looked at that spot. Couldn't see nothing. A few minutes later, I was just, man, look again. I looked again. Nothing. I said, why do you keep doing this? That third time, I picked that rifle up, and a little feller about, probably that big come out of there, and I want you to know them arms was kicking, them legs was killing. He looked like a road runner.
And then it came out of there. Probably the biggest thing he'd ever seen. He wanted you to know. Those arms were swinging, and those legs, kicking like jackhammers. It didn't move like a man. It didn't move like anything he'd ever seen. It looked like a blur, like a living, breathing road rug tearing through the clearing. And just as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished, back into the trees, gone. He'd never seen anything accelerate like that. Not an animal, not a human, nothing.
And walked right across the road, right in front of us at a leisurely pace. She was hitting about 6 foot strides, and it didn't take but 2 to cross that road. And there was a little berm on the edge of the road where, dozers come in and push it clean, where she'd come up on a little rise to go back up into the woods. You could see the ball of her foot and her toes where she pushed off and just, whoop, looked like she was floating. She just effortlessly had to have done it on purpose.
In the dead of night, when silence thickened the air and shadows seemed to shift just beyond sight, a lone driver made their way home. Ellen pulled into the driveway of her isolated farm, the only sign of life in the vast darkness. The headlights cut sharply through the blackness, revealing something completely unexpected. 2 eyes reflected the light, glowing back with an unnatural, eerie shine that no human eye could produce. A cold wave of dread washed over the witness as the figure slowly moved.
As I pulled up, I saw there was something there. Its eyes lit up and flashed light back to me from the light of my vehicle. That was pretty disturbing because that's not a natural thing that happens with humans.
Its massive upper body leaned forward, deliberate and heavy, breaking the stillness of the night. In that brief, haunting moment, the shape came into focus, towering, broad, and covered head to toe in thick, dark hair. Its size was overwhelming, far beyond any human. Then, as if swallowed by the night itself, the creature vanished without a trace. Had she truly come face to face with the legendary Sasquatch, or was it a threatening trick of the darkness?
And I looked at it, and its whole upper body moved towards me. And at that point, I realized that from head to toe, it was covered in hair. It was just very large. I believe that I just witnessed Sasquatch.
Later that day, Ellen returned to the spot where she had first seen the creature, and there, in the soft earth, she discovered a set of large, unmistakable footprints. The night following the sighting, the farm was hidden in an uneasy silence, broken only by the restless gripping of the horses. Normally calm and unshakable, they were suddenly gripped by terror. Kicking and neighing, rearing wildly, they broke through the holding area and ran off into the thick woods. Hours passed before they could be quiet, yet the memory of their panic still remains. Such raw fear had never been witnessed before, and never since. That shadowy presence, glimpsed just hours earlier, seemed to seep into the very air, an unseen watcher haunting the edges of the farm. Was it the elusive Sasquatch, or something far more alarming lurking just beyond sight, waiting patiently in the darkness?
The next day, my horses had escaped the pen. Nothing unnerves them, but that day they were so distraught that they were kicking and neighing and rearing up, and they busted through the pen and ran away. It took a lot to calm them down, and still to this day, I haven't seen that behavior in them.
Keith and his grandson Joe decided to take a bike ride through the nearby forest. During their ride, they came across something unsettling, hoping to enjoy the quiet of nature. They navigated the muddy trail. They had to carefully cross several large puddles. Joe unexpectedly stopped and pointed ahead. He called Keith over to look at something unusual in the mud, a massive footprint, deeply pressed into the soft earth. Keith examined it closely, astonished by its size.
Me and my grandson was kind of bored sitting at home. It was a rainy day, so we decided to go out and do some exploring. We had to cross through a few big mud puddles, and as we did, my grandson said, "Hey, look at that."
I called my grandpa over, and I was like, "Dude, what the heck is this thing in the mud?"
It's crazy. I went and looked, and it was a huge footprint in the middle of this mud puddle. This is crazy. Look at this.
Having worked as a nurse for over 35 years, he was confident no human could leave a footprint like this. Holding his hand next to the print for scale, he measured it at roughly 17 to 18 inches long and 6 to 8 inches wide. The depth of the impression was also remarkable. It was sunk at least 3 inches into the mud, suggesting something heavy had made it. Both Keith and Joe understood immediately that this footprint was not made by any human being.
I've been a nurse for 35 years. I've never seen anybody with feet that big. There's my hand. Look at the size of that footprint. It was basically about 18 inches long and probably 6 to 8 inches wide. We knew that it wasn't a human footprint.
It was pretty deep in the mud. It was like at least 3 inches in the mud.
I weigh about 200 pounds, and my footprint barely went down where this one was down several inches. So to me, it had to be something that weighed 6, 800 pounds or more.
After Ellen's eerie nighttime encounter, Joe and Keith found massive footprints nearby, too big for any human. Could these mysterious signs be proof of something hidden deep in the forest? It was broad daylight the moment he had his first encounter with what he believed to be Bigfoot. He was on his way to work for the swing shift, driving down La Push Road just before reaching the reservation. Near the Third Beach trailhead, only a couple hundred yards from where crowds were gathered on the beach, he began descending a hill when something caught his eye. From about 70 yards away, he saw it. A large, towering figure suddenly stepped out of the brush and moved across the road.
That's where I had my first Bigfoot encounter. And I'm coming down the hill towards this, and I'm probably like 70 yards when I first see this thing. And then it's just big figure just steps out of the brush, and then it just kind of just glides across the road. It doesn't even look at me, and it took about 4 steps, and it hit the fence, and it disappeared into the salmon berries.
It didn't look at him. It didn't hesitate. It simply glided, almost effortlessly, taking just 4 long strides before reaching the fence line and vanishing into a thick patch of salmon berries. The moment was brief, but it left a lasting impression. Whatever he saw that day wasn't ordinary, and it certainly wasn't human.
I'm looking at this giant figure that was like that thick from chest to back. I mean, and huge, 8 feet tall, non-human gait, but humanoid. And I'm trying to classify what this thing is, but it's not real. And I know what it is, but what it is not real.
Todd Nice was a longtime Bigfoot researcher who had spent decades investigating sightings and gathering evidence in the field. He led or participated in numerous expeditions across regions such as Oregon, Washington, Northern California, Alaska, British Columbia, Arizona, and Nebraska. During one of his most notable encounters, Nice realized that what he was looking at weren't people at all. These creatures had very long arms that hung down past their knees. Their shoulders were wide, with big, barrel-like chests that narrowed down to slim waists. Their legs were also long, giving them a tall and powerful look. The one in the middle was the tallest, probably around 9 feet tall. The two standing on either side were a little shorter, maybe 7.5 to 8 feet. But the one in the center stood out the most. It didn't move at all. It just stood there, completely still, like a statue. The two next to it, though, kept shifting their weight from one foot to the other, slowly rocking side to side. As they moved, their long arms swung back and forth in front of their knees in a slow, steady motion. They kept doing this the whole time, never stopping. There was something strange and unsettling about the way they moved. It was clear to him, whatever these things were, they definitely weren't human.
The one in the middle, though, he stood there like a rock, just like a statue. It just did not flinch. But the two on either side of this larger one exhibited this behavior where they were shifting weight from foot to foot, and in the process, rocking left to right like this. These long arms were swinging in front of their knees. At that, I just slumped back in my seat, and I'm just trying to comprehend what I just saw.
On a quiet evening not long ago, a man and woman were driving along the Alpine Loop near Sundance when their calm drive shifted into something unsettling. As they rounded a bend, the pair caught sight of a shadowy figure moving between the trees. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a blur. But when the driver slowed, the form became unmistakably unsettling, tall, broad, and ape-like, its movement oddly deliberate. "Right there! Stop!" one of them whispered urgently, as though raising their voice might draw the creature closer. The couple quickly spun the vehicle around, fumbling to capture the fleeting moment on camera. In the shaky footage, the dark figure lingers just long enough to ignite unease before melting back into the wilderness.
Around this corner, I think.
Oh, look, right there. Stop, back up. It was right there, I just saw it. Watch out, you're like going off the road. Where'd it go? It was huge.
They later remarked that the environment itself seemed perfectly suited for such a beast. Flowing water, thick forest, and jagged rocks providing endless shelter. For just a moment, the idea of Sasquatch didn't feel like a myth, but something breathing and watching from within Utah County's wilderness. What they saw remains unclear, but the eerie silence that followed carried a weight, as if the mountains themselves had swallowed the truth, leaving only rumor and a remaining shiver.
A man and woman were driving on the Alpine Loop near Sundance this month when they captured this video of an unidentified creature.
Oh, right there, stop.
They say the blurring beast could be Bigfoot.
I guess you got everything you need here. You got, the water, you got plenty of shelter in the rocks, I guess. So, I mean...
That's right, the Sasquatch,
if he was here.
Possibly spotted here in Utah County.
When the footage is zoomed in, the figure looks a bit clearer. With a mask placed over it, the movement looks like a quick step forward, almost like a strange, dance-like motion. In that moment, the left shoulder, arm, and side can be seen. Playing the clip backward shows the right leg, bent at the knee, making it seem like the figure is facing the road. Compared to normal animals, the posture looks too straight, too purposeful, more like a human than an animal. Still, it doesn't look as clear as a person would. Since it was filmed at night with what seems to be a basic home camera, the video is blurry, but the movements remain strange and difficult to explain.
Dropped in a little mask so that we can see he kind of steps out. Kind of does this little move here, a little disco move. And as he does, we see his left shoulder, left arm, left side. Scrubbing backwards, we see right leg. It appears his knee is bent. It appears he's facing the road. It was filmed at night, which is bad, probably with a consumer-grade camera.
To strengthen the analysis, a comparison shot, known as the buddy shot, was filmed in the exact same location. This reference footage was carefully scaled, positioned, rotated, and then overlaid with the original clip. Several landmarks in the scene were used to verify alignment. The angle of the road matched almost perfectly when the frame was faded into night. Even a small, twisted tree with a fork near the top lined up exactly with what appeared in the first video. These details confirmed that both recordings came from the very same spot. With this reliable frame of reference established, the strange figure's upright stance and deliberate movement stood out even more. Behavior far less like local wildlife, and far closer to the legend many claim still roams these woods.
This limb was really helpful here, this white limb. See it there for the daytime view. So, what do you think? Not perfect, but it's pretty well lined up. And are you seeing what I'm seeing?
What happens when myth turns into sight? Do you chase it, fear it, or freeze in disbelief? Footage. Courtesy. Wild man of the woods. What do you do when the night goes quiet? Too quiet. And something deep in the woods starts calling. Something that shouldn't be there but is. It was one of those nights where the air felt thick, almost unmoving. No wind, no birds, just silence. Amber and the storyteller stood outside just past midnight near the tree line. Everything was steeped in shadows. That's when they heard it. Two distant calls, low, harsh, and unfamiliar, echoing from deep in the woods. It wasn't any animal they recognized. Not coyotes, not owls, nothing natural. The sound was slower, heavier, as if whatever was making the noise had been watching and was finally ready to be heard. Amber froze. The storyteller didn't move either. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just listened. The woods had gone still again. Too still. And it wasn't the first time something strange had happened out there.
And then one night, Amber and I were out here in the middle of the night, and we heard two calls, like they were calling back and forth to one another. And right before that, about a week before that, I was out here in the middle of the night. I often come out here and check on the dogs. And
about a week earlier, the women had gone out alone, around the same hour. It was something they often did. step outside late to check on the dogs, make sure everything was quiet before turning in. But that night, the quiet wasn't peaceful. It was wrong. A howl, but not quite. It was distorted, warped, like something pretending. And the way it echoed, it felt close, too close. Even though nothing could be seen, they stood there, waiting for another sound. But none came, just silence. Sometimes they hear it again, just faintly in the distance. Other times they don't hear anything at all, but still feel watched. Whatever made that noise, it's still out there, and it's listening.
A week before that, I was out here in the middle of the night. I often come out here and check on the dogs, and I heard something making hideous noises. Like, it sounded kind of like something was getting killed. It sounded really weird. It was back in the woods.
Then there were the footprints. Massive, unmistakable, and deeply pressed into the earth. As if something heavy had walked through, something not meant to be real. The women thought it might be Bigfoot. She hadn't always believed in that sort of thing. In fact, she used to dismiss it entirely, until the day something changed her mind. Something she couldn't explain. Since then, she'd started paying attention, watching, listening. And she wasn't the only one. The tracks had been found more than once, not just in one spot, but in several areas around the property. Each time, they were the same. Huge prints, spaced far apart, with long claw marks into the dirt. It didn't look like any bear or known predator. It looked wrong. And then there were the dogs. Two of them in particular seemed to sense something the others didn't. Their enclosures faced straight toward the woods, and on some nights, just past midnight, they'd stand there in complete silence, staring. Not barking, just still, alert, eyes locked on the dark beyond the trees. The rest of the dogs would be calm, indifferent, even asleep. But those two? Always the same ones, always focused on that one part of the forest. It was as if they were waiting for something. Some encounters leave a mark not in photographs or footprints, but in memory. Quiet, unshakable moments that stay with you long after they've passed. This real-life account comes from the YouTube channel Salish Sasquatch, where true experiences from the forests of the Pacific Northwest are shared in the witness's own words. It's told by Jack Bowers, who was just 15 when he first heard of an event that would stay with his family forever. A night when a Sasquatch tried to enter his family's home in the quiet coastal town of Fort Bragg, California. The night was still, the kind where every sound seems louder. Outside, the air was cool with a faint smell of salt drifting in from the ocean. Inside, the family was gathered when slow, heavy steps began to move toward the house. They weren't quick or clumsy. They were steady, deliberate, each one pressing into the earth as if something very large was approaching. When the figure appeared, it stopped just short of the porch light. Its shape filled the shadows, tall, broad, unmoving. It didn't knock. It didn't speak. For a moment, it simply stood there, as though listening, deciding. Then it shifted slightly, as if testing the space between them and the door. Watch yourself.
In their home, in the middle of the night, actually at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that is important to us, and I think it's important to the Bigfoot community at large. And that's why I'd like to record this, so that my son and my wife and the rest of my family and other people will have at least our understanding of it. And I was about 15 and a half or 16.
Jack wasn't there that night, but hearing the account firsthand at such a young age etched it deep in his mind. It wasn't just a story told around a campfire. This was family. This was real. And as he grew older, he would have his own brushes with the unknown. In Washington State, Jack spent time in dense forest country, places where the light fades quickly and the air holds a hush that feels almost alive. On one trip, he recalled hearing a branch snap deep in the timber. Not the crack of something small, but the sound of weight shifting through the undergrowth. He stopped walking, straining to hear. That's when a deep, chesty exhale drifted from somewhere ahead. See this moment.
Shut. It wouldn't click. And it was just a screen door anyway. The Bigfoot, I'm going to use that expression because later on that's what it is, obviously, came up to the door. It was taller than the door by quite a little bit. And when doors are, what, 78?
Another time, in the same region, faint movement caught his eye. Between two thick cedar trunks, a shadow slipped out of sight, as if it knew it was being watched. Jack never saw its face, but the speed and silence of its retreat felt wrong for any normal animal. Watch here.
Add or subtract to it, from it, it just was what it was. What had happened also at that encounter, we'll use that, at that particular encounter, the animal had put his hand on the sill and left a hand print on the sill. Now that handprint was sketched.
Now years later, Jack still carries those moments. The night in Fort Bragg, the sounds in the Washington timber, the flicker of something more than shadow. None of it left a mark in photographs. None of it was caught in clear evidence. But it lives on, in memory, in the telling, and in the quiet spaces where the forest holds its secrets. What would you do if you were the one standing there, knowing something was watching you from the dark? Most creatures vanish when winter comes, but in the high mountains of British Columbia, something stays. Here, in a land where the air can freeze skin in minutes, life should be scarce. Yet it isn't. Elk still move through the valleys. Moose still browse by the streams. Even the smallest plants, like rose hips, cling to their stems for months under snow. It's a perfect ecosystem, quiet, balanced, and, some believe, watched. Todd Standing has spent years here, following a mystery older than the trails themselves. His question is simple, but the answer changes everything. If Sasquatch exists, how does it survive a winter that even wolves struggle to endure? He begins with food. Here, the land provides more than enough. Deer wander close, unafraid. Elk pass through almost weekly. Once a month, a moose appears, its massive frame enough to feed a family for weeks. And for something that knows the land like no other, winter is not famine, it's opportunity. Even the plants hold secrets. Rose hips, rich in vitamin C, hang on through much of the year. To Todd, every detail adds to the same truth. This is a land that feeds its predators well. Then there's the water. Not just clear, but alive with minerals. Melted from ice that has rested for 20,000 years. Flowing even in the heart of winter, when other streams lock in ice. Watch this part. Some people search the forest for answers. Others simply hope for a meeting. The man behind camping with Sasquatch is one of those people. He's had more than one encounter over the years, all of them positive. For him, Sasquatch is not just a mystery to solve, but a presence worth respecting. He believes these creatures can be curious, even kind, and he's drawn to stories that reveal that side. For this trip, he set his sights on northern Michigan, a place known for its vast, untamed stretches of wilderness. His plan was simple: camp for one night near the Manistee and Huron National Forests, explore during the day, and see what the land might reveal. This area has long been thick with sightings. The locals have stories. Travelers pass through with their own accounts. And somewhere in between the truth and the telling, the mystery lingers.
I just got my camp set up, just set up my tent, and I just was looking around, and there's a nice river here up in northern Michigan near the Manistee National Forest. The area that I'm at has reports in all directions when you look on the Bigfoot mapping project.
The evening air was crisp, the kind that carries sound far across the trees. The ground was soft from a recent rain, and the pine needles muted his steps. As he hiked deeper, the forest began to change. Fallen trees crossed one another in rough X shapes, arches bent low and held in place by nothing but another branch. He'd seen formations like this before, but here, the patterns repeated. Each one felt intentional, almost like words in a language not meant for humans. Watch this part.
That's a pretty cool one right there. That looks a little bit odd. Bit out of place. That's kind of cool through there too. The way those are all angled right there on the center screen. But also, I'm wondering if I have one more right over here.
The deeper he went, the quieter it became. At first he didn't notice. Then it hit him. No birds, no squirrels, no usual rustle of life. Just the wind brushing through the pines. And then it came, a sharp whistle, not close, but not far enough to ignore. He stopped, his breath caught in his chest. Another whistle followed, faint, almost like someone calling from a distance. The sound carried just long enough to blur the line between natural and unnatural. Watch yourself.
Wonder what that noise is. That noise right there. There it went. No idea. I'm gonna see if I can catch it again because I heard it just a tiny bit louder a second ago. Right there.
A narrow trail took him to a sandy slope leading down to the water's edge. The river moved slowly here, dark and reflective. In the soft ground were small, bare-looking prints. Too narrow for boots, too long for deer. There were no adult tracks beside them, just these, moving with purpose along the shoreline. He studied them, the silence behind him feeling heavier now.
These are kind of interesting. They're like small and foot-shaped. But it could be kids that hiked or whatever. We are definitely right off the trail. I mean, it almost looks foot-shaped, just going across. Yeah, that's interesting.
The trail opened to a cluster of trees leaning together like a teepee. Beneath them, another X-shaped formation. Just beyond, an arch bent so low it nearly touched the ground, held down by a single thick branch wedged into place. It didn't feel like storm damage or random debris. It felt deliberate, a marker left for those who knew how to read it.
Big one and a little one underneath it. Right next to that is this, sort of X-shaped. That's cool right here though. Let me back up so you see the hole. There we go. That is cool.
By the time the sun began to fade, the forest had offered no clear answers, only signs, bends, breaks, tracks, and the echo of that strange whistle. Maybe it was all natural, or maybe something had been watching from the trees, curious about the man who had come looking for it. Have you ever followed a trail in the snow, not knowing what made it? Not a deer, not a coyote, something heavier, something that walks like us, but isn't us. That's the thought that crossed Mark's mind on a quiet back road in the mountains. Snow still clung to the ground, but not everywhere. Patches had melted, leaving bare dirt in strange shapes. That's when he saw it. A print, broad, deep, fresh. At first he thought bear. His boot almost fit inside, but the shape was off. The toes looked wrong. The track crossed the road, then slid down into a narrow cut in the hill. Watch this part. Mark from Colorado Bigfoot knows these signs.
Must be a bear. Big old bear. Look, He's really big, you guys. Yeah, I can see his paws and everything. Look at the size of him. You guys, my whole foot just about fits in his. Look at him, he came down that road. This is probably, it could be up to a week or two old. And he went over to there.
He's filmed in these woods before. A few months earlier, he found a strange clearing here, open ground with nothing growing, almost a perfect circle. He followed the prints into the bare dirt. The snow was gone, but the trail was easy to see. A lean-to of broken branches stood just off the road. Same as before. Same spot. He walked 100 yards uphill. More signs appeared. Fresh breaks in limbs, dirt piled over sticks, shapes that looked arranged. The air felt heavy. The forest was still. Not a single bird called. Watch this. Mark found a triangle made from logs.
Look at that footprint. Look at the front of it. You guys, look at that. Right there. You see it? The front is like a real, that's a footprint. The problem is, this dives down at the back. Look at that, look how big. Yes, yes. Thank you, somebody, thank you.
Then a cluster of tridents, 3 thick branches joined at the base, all pointing the same way. On the ground, a deep, long print stood out, wider than his boot, too wide for a bear. Then it came, a whistle, soft, far away. It sounded human. Mark stopped, listened. The whistle came again, quick, almost mocking. Then it was gone. Play this.
That's a human whistle. I mean, maybe like the best person in audio will hear it, but they're right up there. Hold on, let me breathe. I hold my breath when I zoom, and I'm already out of breath. There's this ridge line up there. It's right above. If you were to take that ridge line down, all the way down to that corner, I heard it again, you would end up at the baby's head. So I'm very close to the baby.
The tracks led to a strange path through the undergrowth. Fallen logs lay side by side, all lined up in the same direction. Mark calls this a Sasquatch highway, a route used over and over until it's clear as a road. He's been in places where the woods feel alive, where he leaves drained, zapped, as he says, like something has pulled the energy from him. But here, it felt different, empty, and that emptiness was worse. Still, the bear tracks were fresh. They had crossed the snow at the edge of the trail not long ago. Somewhere in the pines, a real predator was close. But the signs, the prints, the structures, the whistle, were not a bear's. Mark has walked many wild places, but this one left him unsettled. The forest here doesn't shout. It whispers, and sometimes the silence speaks louder than any sound. So what do you think? A lone bear, a hidden person, or something much older walking these mountains long before we did? A quiet snow fell heavy overnight, blanketing the North Country with a thick white coat. Shelby and Chad stepped outside their cabin, ready to tackle their daily chores. But something unusual caught their eyes. Huge footprints pressed deep into the fresh snow right by their gate. What made these prints stand out wasn't just their size, but the long, powerful strides between each one. Could it be Bigfoot wandering their property again? The tracks wound around the north side of their land, a spot where strange things had happened before. Shelby's voice was calm but curious as she showed the massive prints beside her own size 13 boot, barely fitting inside one of the impressions. The snow around was at least 3 feet deep, and even Chad struggled to move through it. But however heavy the snow, whoever or whatever made these tracks had moved with ease. They hadn't been there the night before. The snow had fallen after their last check, meaning this visitor came in just hours before they found the tracks. The snow had partially covered the prints now, evidence of how fresh this mysterious presence was. Shelby grabbed their snowshoes, knowing they would need them to follow the trail without sinking deep into the snow. Play here.
Going around our gate, this is the north side of our property. This is where we've always seen stuff take place up here. You guys can check out a couple of our other videos, like North Country Sasquatch is one of them, or North Country Bigfoot. Real quick, guys, if you hate the Cleveland Browns, hit that subscribe button.
As they walked carefully, each step sank heavy. The forest was silent, except for the crunch of snow beneath their boots. The tracks led past the gate and into the thick woods beyond, disappearing into the shadows where the trees grew close. The feeling was strange, both exciting and tense, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Their videos from past seasons showed similar signs: large footprints, glimpses of dark shapes moving just beyond sight, and strange noises caught on camera. This place held stories, whispers of a giant hidden in the trees, but seeing the prints up close made it real. The snow seemed to capture a moment frozen in time, a visit from something big and unseen. As they followed the trail, Shelby and Chad talked quietly about what it might be. A bear? The tracks were bigger than any bear they'd known around here, and the strides too long. Something else was moving here, something that left its mark in the snow like a silent warning. The woods grew darker as the sun dipped low. The cold air bit sharper. Suddenly, a faint whistle echoed through the trees. Soft, almost human, but strange. Shelby paused, heart quickening. Could it be a signal? Or just the wind playing tricks? The tension hung thick like the falling dusk. Watch this part.
Heading up to the north side of our property. Let's get out and take a look at them real quick. So if you guys have seen our videos, some early videos, there has been some interesting stuff taking place, some Bigfoot-like. Look at those tracks right there. So those tracks are going around our gate. This is the north side of our property. This is where we've always seen stuff take place.
They pressed on, feeling watched, wondering if the visitor was close, just out of sight. The snow showed more signs: broken branches, disturbed dirt, like a trail left behind by something careful but large. Watch this part.
See how big those strides are. Should we walk them? Let's walk next to them. Holy jeez. So these weren't here yesterday evening when we had come home. These, and they're snowed in. So this, whatever this was, came through here last night. And then, we're gonna have to go get the snowshoes. This stuff's too deep.
By now, their breath was visible in the cold air. The trail ended near a clearing, where snow-covered structures of sticks and rocks lay scattered, arranged oddly, as if someone had placed them there. Was it a marker, a message, or simply the forest's natural order disturbed by a giant's presence? Watch this part.
Interesting up on the 5. We're gonna have to go get the snowshoes. I'm just punching through that too far. It's way too hard to get through there. You can look at my snow. So much of a mess I make. Whatever that is long and tall. We're gonna go get snowshoes and we'll go follow those and see where they go. We're going to go hunting Bigfoot.
With the night coming fast, Shelby and Chad made their way back to the cabin, minds racing with questions. What had they really found? Was it a bear? Or something else? Something bigger that walks these woods when no one's looking? The snow might hide footprints, but it cannot hide the truth for long. And here, in the quiet cold of the North Country, the mystery waits, silent and deep. What do you think left these tracks? Have you ever felt watched in the woods? This footage has left experts and viewers stunned, a silent witness to something unknown. It wasn't supposed to be recorded, yet here it is, an unblinking eye into a hidden world. What do you think you saw? Proof or illusion? Share your thoughts below and join the search for answers. Sometimes the quietest moments hold the loudest secrets. It was early October, deep in the Alabama backwoods. The kind of place where daylight fades fast and every sound carries, but you can't tell from where. The man telling this story had hunted these woods for decades. A lifelong outdoorsman, he knew the difference between a bear, a buck, and everything else. He had spent countless mornings before sunrise in the tree stands, evenings tracking deer along game trails, and nights listening to the low calls of owls. The woods were like an old friend, one that spoke in rustles, cracks, and whispers. That evening, the air was cool and crisp. The ground was soft with fallen pine needles, muffling his slow, careful steps. A bow was slung across his shoulder, its weight familiar, a companion on hunts since his youth. Shadows stretched long across the ridges, and the only movement came from leaves drifting down in silence. The scent of damp earth and pine hung in the air, wrapping around him like a quiet warning. He scanned the tree line as he moved, eyes catching on every flicker of motion. A squirrel leaping, a branch swaying, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, a crack. Not close, but heavy, like something big shifting its weight. He stopped and listened. Another step followed, this time in rhythm with his own. Not a deer, not a hunter. Watch this part.
Okay, now what I wanted to do today was tell you where I received my first Bigfoot report. This was not my sighting. I had my first sighting where I was living at my house many years ago. But this was the first time that somebody come by my house and said, I just saw the giant monkey, was what it was called back then.
His instincts told him to stay still, to let the forest speak. The wind whispered through the treetops, but beneath it came another sound. Measured, deliberate. His breathing slowed, his ears strained. Every nerve seemed tuned to that steady cadence. Up ahead, 50 yards, he saw it. Broad shoulders, dark hair hanging in thick layers down its back. Its arms swung low, past the hips, each movement smooth but powerful. It stepped into a shaft of fading light. For a moment it just stood there, looking right at him. And that's when he saw its face. Not animal, not fully. It looked too human. Watch this moment.
Right up here in this curve was where this thing come running across the road, and the guy that that's what we had heard it was a giant monkey, and that's what everybody in this area called it, and that's what we thought it was. But this guy here, after he saw it that day, he knew that it was not a monkey.
His breath caught, every muscle tightened, caught between the urge to run and the pull of trying to understand. The eyes locked on his were dark and unblinking, holding him still like a deer in headlights. The figure turned, moving up the ridge in long, powerful strides. No sound except the swish of wet grass and the faint crack of branches underfoot. Within seconds, it was gone, swallowed by the trees. He stayed frozen, bow still in his hands. His heart pounded, but his legs refused to move. Even now, years later, he says the same thing. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man, it was something else.
Okay, now we're up here in the curve, and right here is the bank. Right here is where it slid off, and you could actually, back then it wasn't as covered with pine straw as it is now, but now those woods back out there look pretty much like they did back in around 1971 or 72.
In a place where hunters know every trail and every shadow, something walked that didn't belong. Its gaze lingered in his memory, leaving a question he could never answer. So what was it that watched him from the ridge that night, and how many others have felt the same eyes in the dark? The swamp in daylight can feel just as unsettling. No houses, no trails, just water, tangled shadows, and the constant hum of insects. Some say it's empty here once you leave the roads behind. Others say this is where things begin. In the summer of 2022, two researchers, Chris and Mark, stepped into this wild stretch. They weren't hunters or campers. They were here for something else, something they believed could only be found when the human world was far behind. They carried 2 audio recorders, an EMF meter, and one question: what's moving through these swamps when no one's watching? The first recorder went up quickly, tied to a branch. The air was still, heavy. Then, 3 loud knocks echoed through the trees. Deep, hollow, too even to be random. Watch this part.
The auto recorder is here. Okay. The auto recorder is taller than
another one.
7 feet maybe. We're getting knocks back this way.
Yeah, we had 3 in a row there.
So we're starting to get some interesting stuff, and it's coming back from the same location area.
All right. How do you want to do this, Chris? This is the record.
Oh, it's already.
They stopped and listened. The swamp grew quiet again, but the feeling had changed. It was no longer empty. At the second spot, they tied the recorder high into a palm tree. As Mark worked, movement caught his eye. Something slipped between the fronds. There, then gone. Chris turned just in time to see it vanish. Whatever it was fast. Too fast for a person. The EMF meter came alive. Numbers jumped from 0.1 to 1.4. Chris spoke softly, explaining they meant no harm. Another knock answered him, then another from the opposite side. Something was circling them. From deeper in the swamp came a sharp crack. Wood striking wood. The sound rolled through the trees. Watch this moment.
0.2 fluctuation.
There's a knock over there.
That was up here. 1.4. 1.4.
Never disappoints, I'm telling you.
1.4. I'm trying to.
1.4?
It was 1.4 just for a brief moment. Right here with us. 0.8.
Something right over there. Again.
Mark's gut told him they weren't alone. But it wasn't just one thing out there. The knocks came in patterns from different angles, as if more than one was moving unseen. Then something hit the ground nearby, thrown, not dropped. It was close enough to make them step back. Mark explained what he'd seen earlier. Only part of the figure, just a quarter of it, slipping between the fronds. In the shifting light, it looked blurred, like it didn't fully belong to this world. Chris agreed. It didn't look clear. It looked cloaked. More spikes on the meter, a faint vocalization, low and hard to place, drifted through the still air. The swamp seemed alive, watching, listening. The activity didn't stop until they began packing up. The last knocks came as they walked away, fading into the distance. Play this last sequence.
What was that? Did you hear that vocal?
It was over here.
It sounded. I heard that vocal.
Hard to tell what it was.
I heard it. It was on the right, yeah.
When we got that triangle, classic triangle pattern.
Some say knocks like these are warnings. Others think they're messages. Out here, there's no easy answer. But Chris and Mark left with more than recordings. They left with the feeling that the swamp had been speaking to them. The question is, who, or what, was answering back? From chilling shadows in Washington to the swamps of Florida, each encounter leaves us with more questions than answers. Were these frightened campers and families witnesses to a myth, or to something real still walking our forests? The truth remains hidden in the darkness. What do you believe? Could Bigfoot truly roam among us? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more encounters with the unexplained.